chosen one, stop everything you are doing right now and anchor your spirit to what I am about to reveal. Because what I uncovered preparing this shook me in a way I was not expecting. And I believe, with everything in me, that it is going to do the same to you. I know what the last few days have felt like. The heaviness sitting on your chest before you even open your eyes. Waking at 3 or 4 in the morning with a weight you cannot explain to anyone. Conversations that stop the moment you walk into the room. People pulling away, not because you did something wrong, but because something inside you shifted, and they can feel it even if they cannot name it. You have been called too sensitive, too deep, too much. Your entire life. The world has handed you a label that was never yours to carry. And the enemy has been working overtime for one reason and one reason only. He knows what happens the moment you discover who you truly are. Not the version they told you to be, not the identity the world assigned to you. Your real identity, the one encoded in your spirit before the foundations of the earth were laid. You did not find this by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. God did. This is a divine appointment scheduled before you were born. In the next few minutes, I am going to reveal the true identity that was written into you before your first breath. I am going to expose the exact lie that has been keeping you trapped in a false name. And I am going to give you the declaration that seals your true identity permanently, so that nothing and no one can strip it from you again. Do not click away. Do not scroll past this. Stay until the very last word, because your entire life is about to make sense in a way it never has before. I see you. I have always seen you. And what I am about to say may be the first time someone has described your life without you having to explain it first. You are the one who walks into a room and immediately absorbs what everyone else is feeling. The tension no one will name. The sadness hiding behind someone's forced smile. The anger simmering underneath polite conversation. You feel all of it, and you carry it home with you like luggage that does not belong to you. You carry it to bed. You carry it into the next morning. And you wake up exhausted, not because your body is tired, but because your spirit has been processing burdens that were never yours to hold. People come to you with their deepest problems, their broken marriages, their fears they have never spoken out loud, their confessions that would terrify them if anyone else heard. They pour into you because something in you feels safe. Something in your presence tells them they will not be judged, and you hold it all. You absorb their pain, you offer your strength, and you send them away lighter than they came. But when it is your turn to fall apart, the room goes quiet. The phone stops ringing. The people you poured into suddenly cannot find the words, or worse, they simply are not there. And you sit alone in the silence, wondering if anyone will ever show up for you the way you show up for them. You have felt like a stranger in your own life, like you were dropped into a story that does not belong to you. The career that looks fine on paper but suffocates your spirit every single morning. The relationships where you perform a version of yourself that keeps the peace but kills something inside you slowly, quietly, one compromise at a time. You smile because it is easier than explaining. You agree because fighting for what you actually need always seems to cost more than you can afford. And somewhere along the way, you stopped recognizing the person in the mirror. Not because they changed, but because the real you has been buried so deep under everyone else's expectations that you forgot what your own voice sounds like. And here is the part that cuts the deepest. The worst part is not the pain itself. The worst part is that you have started to believe them. Maybe they were right about you. Maybe you really are too much. Maybe your sensitivity is not a gift but a glitch. Maybe the loneliness is not a season but a sentence. Maybe the reason nobody stays is because something in you is fundamentally broken and everyone else can see it except you. I need you to hear what I am about to say and let it land in the deepest part of your spirit, in the place where those lies have been living rent-free for years. That is the single biggest lie you have ever believed, and it was planted by the enemy on purpose, with precision, with patience, over years and years. because he knows exactly what happens when you stop believing it. Your sensitivity is not a defect. It is a detector. What you carry is not a wound. It is a weapon. The depth they called too much is the very thing that gives your words the weight to shift atmospheres, to walk into a room and change what is happening without saying a single word. And the isolation you have been drowning in, the silence that felt like abandonment, is not evidence of your disqualification. It is evidence of your selection. Think about that for a moment. The enemy does not waste premium attacks on people with ordinary assignments. He does not invest years of warfare against someone who carries nothing of consequence. The intensity of what you have survived is the clearest proof of the magnitude of what you carry. He has been fighting you this hard because he is terrified of what happens when you discover who you really are. Before you were formed in your mother's womb, God knew you. Before you took your first breath, he set you apart. Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5 does not say he considered you. It does not say he thought about maybe using you someday. It says he knew you, he consecrated you, he appointed you. Past tense, done, finished, sealed before the foundations of the earth were laid. The world has been calling you the wrong name your entire life. They called you broken, they called you dramatic, they called you the problem, the difficult one, the one who makes everything complicated just by being in the room. But heaven has a different file on you, and what is written in that file will shock you. Not because it is something foreign, not because it is something you need to become, but because somewhere deep inside, beneath all the labels and the pain and the years of performing someone else's version of you, your spirit has always known the truth. Your true identity was never destroyed. It was never erased. It was hidden on purpose, protected, kept in a vault the enemy could not access, waiting for the exact moment you would be ready to receive it. And that moment, chosen one, is right now. It is not next year. It is not when you feel worthy. It is not when your circumstances improve. It is this breath, this word, this divine appointment that was scheduled long before you pressed play. But what God did next, what he has been quietly orchestrating behind every closed door and every silent night and every relationship that walked away, will rewrite everything you thought you knew about yourself. And to understand it, we need to look at a man who spent 40 years living under the wrong name, Moses. The name that shakes thrones and splits oceans, the man who stood before the most powerful ruler on earth and said, "Let my people go." But that is not where his story begins. And the part that most people skip over, the part the sermons rarely touch, is the part that mirrors your life in a way that might take your breath away. Moses was born with a target on his back. A decree had gone out to kill every boy born to his people. His mother hid him for 3 months, 3 months of holding her breath every time the baby cried, knowing that a single sound could end everything. Then she placed him in a basket on the river, trusting God with a faith so desperate it looks insane from the outside. And he was pulled from the water by the daughter of the very king who wanted him dead, raised in a palace that was not his home, given a name, an education, a position, and an identity that looked spectacular to the world, but had absolutely nothing to do with who he actually was. For 40 years, Moses lived as Egyptian royalty. He wore their clothes, he spoke their language, he ate at their tables and moved through their courts as though he belonged there. And on the surface, it looked like he had everything a person could want: power, comfort, status, security. But something inside him knew, something in his spirit refused to settle. He knew he was not one of them. He knew the identity he wore every day was a costume, and no matter how well it fit, it was suffocating something inside him that needed air. The tension between who the world told him to be and who his spirit knew, he was eventually exploded. He killed a man in a moment of rage he could not control. He was exposed, and he ran. Here is where it gets personal. Moses did not run to something, he ran to nothing. He ran to the backside of a desert, so empty even the maps had forgotten it existed. He became a shepherd in a wasteland, tending animals for his father-in-law, living in complete obscurity. No palace, no title, no audience. The man who had been raised among kings was now sleeping under open skies in the middle of nowhere, with sheep as his only companions, and he stayed there for 40 years. 4 decades of silence. 4 decades where the world forgot about him entirely. 4 decades where his name meant nothing to anyone outside a tiny circle of nomads. Can you imagine that? 40 years of feeling like everything you were promised, everything you sensed about yourself, everything your spirit whispered in the quiet moments when no one else was around, was a lie. 40 years of wondering if you made it all up, if the calling you felt was just arrogance dressed up as purpose, if the fire you carried in your chest was just foolishness that finally burned out. 40 years of the enemy whispering, you missed your chance, your moment has passed, you are just a shepherd now. This desert is all you will ever be. Does any of that sound familiar? Because I know what your desert looks like. Maybe it is not a physical wasteland. Maybe it is a job that has nothing to do with who you are. Maybe it is a season of waiting so long you have stopped counting the days. Maybe it is a silence from God that has lasted so many months you have started to wonder if he ever spoke at all. Maybe you look at your life right now and you cannot see a single thing that matches the enormity of what you once felt called to. And the enemy is using that gap, that distance between the promise and the reality, to convince you that the promise was never real. But here is what Moses did not know. And here is what I need you to hear, as if God himself is speaking it directly over your life right now. Those 40 years were not a punishment. They were not a demotion. They were not evidence that God forgot his promise or changed his mind. Those 40 years were God stripping away the false identity so that the true identity could finally emerge without contamination. Think of a cocoon. From the outside, it looks like death. It looks like everything has stopped. The caterpillar that entered seems to have been destroyed. But inside, away from every watching eye, something extraordinary is happening that no microscope can fully capture. The old form is dissolving completely. Every single cell is being reorganized. Every structure is being broken down and rebuilt from nothing. And the creature that emerges is so radically different from the one that entered that if you placed them side by side, you would swear they were 2 entirely different beings. That cocoon is your season right now. The isolation, the silence, the painful stripping away of everything you thought you were. It feels like destruction. It feels like God abandoned the project halfway through. But he did not abandon it. He is doing the most sacred work of your entire existence in the one place no one else can see. He is removing the palace identity, the performer identity, the people-pleaser identity, the one who shrinks to make others comfortable, the one who dimmed their own light so the room would not feel threatened. He is dissolving every false version of you, layer by layer, agreement by agreement, until the true version, the one encoded before your first breath, can finally stand in the open without apology. Moses did not discover who he really was in the palace. He discovered it at a burning bush in the desert. God did not meet him when he had his life together. God met him when he had nothing left, when the titles were gone, when the reputation was ash, when the false identity had been completely burned away and only the raw, stripped down, trembling real version remained. And what did God say to him in that moment? He did not say, "You are a shepherd." He did not say, "You are a failure who ran away when things got hard." He said, "Take off your sandals. The ground you are standing on is holy. I am sending you. Not the Egyptian version of you, not the palace version, not the performer who spent 40 years wearing someone else's name. You, the one underneath all of that. The one I knew before you were formed in your mother's womb. Your isolation is not a detour, it is the burning bush." And the voice speaking to you right now through this message, through this exact moment, is telling you the same thing it told Moses. I see you. I know your name, the real one, and I am not finished with you. I am just getting started. If you are feeling this right now, drop a comment below. Type, "My identity is shifting." Let heaven witness your declaration, because what you put into words has power, and the moment you speak it, something begins to move. And this brings us to someone whose story mirrors yours in a way that will shake you to your core. David, the shepherd boy nobody thought to invite. And if the story of Moses shows you that God strips the false identity in the desert, the story of David shows you something even more personal. It shows you that sometimes the people who should have seen you first are the ones who overlooked you completely. When the prophet Samuel came to Jesse's house to anoint the next king of Israel, Jesse lined up his sons. One by one, tall and strong and impressive, they stood before the prophet. And one by one God said, "No, not this one, not him either." Samuel looked at Jesse and asked, "Are these all the sons you have?" And Jesse, his own father, had to pause, because he had forgotten one. He had not even bothered to call David in from the fields. His youngest son, the runt, the one tending the sheep in the dust and the wind, the one so insignificant in his family's eyes that when a prophet literally showed up at the front door looking for someone special, David was not even considered worth presenting. Let that land for a moment. His own father forgot him. Not a stranger, not an enemy, not a distant relative who barely knew his name. His father, the man who was supposed to see him first, speak over him first, believe in him first, protect his identity before anyone else could touch it, looked at a room full of sons and decided David was not worth the walk from the sheep pen to the house. He was invisible in his own home, insignificant in the eyes of the person whose approval mattered most. And I know that cuts you because something in your story looks exactly like that. You have been the forgotten one, the overlooked one, the one who gave everything you had, poured out every ounce of love and effort and sacrifice, and was still treated like an afterthought. Maybe it was a parent who never quite saw you the way you needed to be seen, who praised your siblings while your accomplishments sat unacknowledged in the corner. Maybe it was a family that celebrated everyone else's milestones while yours gathered dust. Maybe it was a church, a workplace, a friendship group that kept you close enough to use your gifts, but never close enough to honor the person behind them. And the rejection did not just sting for a moment and then fade. It shaped you. It carved grooves in the way you see yourself. It taught you to expect less, to want smaller, to shrink your dreams down to a size that would not embarrass you when no one showed up to celebrate. It taught you to apologize for taking up space. It taught you to be grateful for crumbs. But here is the part the enemy has been terrified you would discover. The rejection was never about your value. It was about your assignment. David was not overlooked because he was unworthy. He was overlooked because what he carried was so powerful, so dangerous to the existing order, that the people closest to him literally could not perceive it. Their spiritual eyes were not calibrated to see what God had hidden inside this quiet shepherd boy. Jesse did not forget David because David was nothing. Jesse forgot David because what David carried required a prophet to recognize. Think about what that means for your life right now. The people who overlooked you were not making a statement about your worth. They were revealing the limits of their own perception. They could not see you because you were operating on a frequency they had no equipment to detect. You have been walking among people who were spiritually blind to the very thing that makes you extraordinary. And instead of understanding that their rejection was divine redirection, you internalized it. You took their blindness and turned it into your own identity. You looked at their inability to see you and whispered to yourself, "They cannot see me, so there must be nothing to see." That is the lie. And today, in this moment, it dies. When Samuel finally laid eyes on David, brought in from the fields with dust on his feet and sheep smell on his clothes, Scripture says something remarkable. God told the prophet, "Do not look at his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 7. God was not evaluating David by the same metrics the world used. Not by his height, not by his reputation, not by whether his own father remembered him. He was looking at something hidden, something internal, something that no resume or family reputation or social standing could ever capture. And what he saw in David was a heart after his own, not perfect, not polished, not performing for an audience or pretending to be something it was not. Just real, raw and honest and hungry for God in a way that no amount of rejection could manufacture or destroy. David's worship in the wilderness, his conversations with God when no one was listening, his quiet faithfulness with sheep when the world offered him no recognition, those were not wasted years. Those were the years that forged the identity God would use to reshape an entire nation. Your wilderness is building the same thing in you right now. Every time you chose integrity when no one was watching and no reward was coming. Every time you prayed when the ceiling felt like concrete and the words fell like stones. Every time you stayed faithful to the quiet whisper of your calling when the world screamed that it was foolish, when your bank account laughed at your vision, when your own family raised their eyebrows and said, "Be realistic." God saw every single moment. He catalogued it. He weighed it on scales the world does not possess. And he is using all of it. You have survived what should have broken you. Not barely survived. Not survived as a shell, a ghost of who you were before the storm hit. You survived and came out sharper, clearer, more dangerous to the enemy than you were before the battle started. The relationships that ended, the betrayals that tore your world apart, the moments when you were completely alone and no one knew and no one came, and the silence was so loud it almost consumed you, those were not accidents. They were selections. God was choosing what stays and what goes. He was removing every person, every pattern, every false comfort that would have diluted your true identity if it remained in your life one day longer. You are not who they said you were. You are not the too sensitive one. You are not the too much one. You are not the one who makes everything difficult just by existing. You are someone whose very presence carries a frequency that disturbs the plans of the enemy and disrupts the carefully maintained illusions of people who have built their entire lives on surfaces. They were never rejecting you. They were reacting to what you carry. And what you carry, chosen one, is a mantle that was measured for you and only you, cut to fit your specific frame, your particular pain, your unique journey, and your holy fire. No one else can wear it. No one else can fake it. And no one, not the enemy, not the people who left, not the family that forgot to call your name, no one can take it from you. David went from forgotten shepherd to anointed king. Not because someone finally gave him permission, not because his family apologized and said, "We should have seen you sooner," but because God's timeline does not require human cooperation. When the time came, God moved. Samuel poured the oil, and everything in David's world shifted permanently. Your oil is being poured right now. Through these words, through this moment that was not random, through the stirring in your spirit that you cannot deny and cannot explain to anyone who has not felt it themselves. But here is where it goes deeper than anyone has ever told you. Because knowing your true identity exists is only half the revelation. Understanding what has been actively hiding it from you, what force has been working day and night to keep you from stepping into it, that is the part that changes everything. Something has been happening around you lately, and you have noticed it even if you have not been able to name it. People are behaving differently. Relationships that once felt stable are suddenly strained for reasons nobody can articulate. Friends who used to call every week have gone quiet. Family members who always had something to say are watching you now with a look you cannot quite decode. It is not hostility, not exactly. It is more like confusion, like they are standing in front of someone they used to know and realizing, slowly and uncomfortably, that the person they are looking at is not the same person who was there 6 months ago. And you have been telling yourself it is something you did wrong. Maybe you said something that offended them. Maybe you changed too much too fast. Maybe you outgrew the version of yourself that they were comfortable with, and now they do not know how to sit across the table from the version that is emerging. And part of that is actually true. You did change, but the change was not your doing. The change was God's doing, and the discomfort the people around you are feeling is not because something went wrong in your life. It is because something went profoundly right. Here is the truth most people in your life will never be able to articulate, not because they are cruel, but because they simply do not have the spiritual vocabulary for it. When God begins to shift your identity from the false version to the true version, it creates a frequency change that everyone around you can sense, but almost no one can understand. It is like tuning a radio from one station to another. During the transition, there is static. There is interference. The old station fades out. The new one has not fully locked in yet. And everyone listening hears noise they cannot interpret. That noise, that dissonance, that strange tension hanging in the air of your relationships is what your world is experiencing right now. The people pulling away from you are not rejecting you. They are sensing a frequency they cannot match. They are grieving, unconsciously, without even knowing they are doing it, the old version of you that they could predict and control and keep in a comfortable box. The you who said yes when you meant no. The you who dimmed your own light so the room would not feel threatened. The you who absorbed everyone's pain without complaint, cleaned up everyone's emotional mess, and never once asked for a single thing in return. That version is dissolving right now, cell by cell, agreement by agreement, and the people who built their relationship with that version are panicking because they can feel the ground shifting beneath the dynamic they always depended on. This is not a sign that something is breaking. This is a sign that something is being born. And birth always looks violent from the outside. You are an empath. Not in the watered-down pop psychology sense where everyone on the internet claims to be sensitive and deep, in the real sense. In the sense that you walk into a room and you feel what nobody is saying out loud. You sense the undercurrent beneath polite conversation. You pick up on the lie hiding behind the confident smile, the fear masquerading as anger, the loneliness dressed up as fierce independence. You have carried this ability your whole life, and for most of that life, it felt like a curse. It felt like an exposed nerve that the entire world kept pressing. Everyone else seemed to have skin between them and the chaos, and you had none. But what if I told you something that will change the way you see yourself forever? The thing you have been desperately trying to hide, the thing you have been ashamed of at every family dinner and work meeting and social gathering, the thing that made you feel fundamentally defective in a world that rewards numbness. That thing is actually the most powerful spiritual instrument God has ever placed inside a human being. Your sensitivity is not a flaw, it is a radar. It is the exact mechanism God uses to give you discernment that most people walking this earth will never possess. You do not just feel emotions. You read spiritual atmospheres. You detect shifts in energy and intent that have nothing to do with psychology, textbooks, and everything to do with the spirit realm operating around you at all times, invisible to most, but screaming loud and clear to you. The reason you get exhausted in crowds is not because you are weak. It is because your system is processing more spiritual data in 30 seconds than most people process in an entire week. The reason certain people drain you completely is not simply because you lack boundaries, though boundaries absolutely matter. It is because your spirit is actively filtering the spiritual weight they are carrying, weight they do not even know they have. And some of them are carrying burdens that would crush a person without your specific capacity and calibration. The reason you wake at 3 in the morning, heart pounding, chest tight, mind racing with thoughts that do not feel like your own, is not anxiety in the clinical sense. It is interception. Your spirit is picking up signals that the enemy is broadcasting in the night watches, trying to reach you at your most vulnerable, because he knows exactly what you are capable of when you are fully awake and fully aligned with your true identity. The world told you to medicate it, to numb it, to manage it with breathing techniques and coping strategies that treat your gift like a disorder instead of recognizing it for what it actually is. A weapon system that was custom-built for the assignment only you can carry. They called it generalized anxiety. They called it clinical depression. They called it emotional dysregulation. They called it being too much for the room. They pathologized the very gift that makes you irreplaceable in God's eternal plan. But here is what I need you to see clearly. The enemy did not just try to make you ashamed of your gift. He went further than that. He tried to make you identify with the shame. He wanted you to look at the sensitivity, the depth, the emotional complexity, the spiritual weight you carry, and say to yourself, "This is what is wrong with me," instead of saying, "This is my weapon, this is my radar." This is the thing that makes the enemy lose sleep, because he cannot figure out how to shut it off. He tried to convince you that your greatest strength was your biggest weakness, and for a long time, maybe for decades, you believed him. You agreed with the lie. You signed the contract. You wore the label. But something shifted. Recently, maybe in the last few weeks, maybe in the last few months, something inside you started to push back against the old narrative with a force you did not ask for and cannot control. A restlessness that is not anxiety but activation, a growing, unshakable sense that the smallness you have been living in is no longer sustainable, no longer tolerable, no longer something your spirit is willing to accept for one more day. A quiet but absolutely unstoppable, knowing that you were built for something so much larger than the box you have been crouching in, suffocating in, apologizing for not fitting into. That restlessness is your true identity pressing against the walls of the false one. It is the butterfly pushing against the cocoon. It is the king inside the shepherd waking up. And the discomfort you feel, the agitation that keeps you up at night and will not let you settle for what used to satisfy you, is not a sign of breakdown. It is the pain of expansion. It is the growing pain of someone stepping into a version of themselves that is bigger, wilder, more powerful, and more holy than anything they have ever inhabited before. Share this right now with someone who has been called too sensitive, too quiet, too deep. They need to hear this today. They need to know they are not broken. They need to know their sensitivity is not a diagnosis. It is a divine instrument. But here is the part that might be difficult to hear. And I need you to stay with me, because this next piece is the key that unlocks everything we have been building toward. There is one thing, one hidden agreement, that has been quietly blocking your true identity from fully activating this entire time. And it is not what you think it is. It is not the enemy out there. It is not the people who hurt you. It is not the circumstances that held you back or the opportunities that never came. It is something much closer than any of that. Something that has been sitting inside your own heart, undetected and unchallenged, for years. And until you see it, until you name it out loud, until you break your agreement with it once and for all, your true identity will remain locked behind a door you keep almost opening but never quite stepping through. And here is where it gets truly confrontational, where we must look honestly at something most messages like this will never dare to touch. Because it is easier to talk about the enemy out there. It is easier to point at the people who hurt you, the systems that failed you, the circumstances that conspired against you, the relationships that took more than they gave, and all of that is real. The warfare was real. The betrayal was real. The injustice was real, and I am not minimizing a single moment of it. But the reason your true identity has not fully activated yet is not because of what was done to you. It is because of what you agreed to inside yourself in response to what was done to you. Let me explain, and please hear me carefully, because this is not accusation. This is not blame. This is not me pointing a finger at someone who has already been pointed at too many times. This is the diagnosis that sets you free. When the world told you that you were too much, you did not just hear it and let it pass through. You signed an internal agreement with it. somewhere deep inside, in a chamber of your heart you may not even consciously access anymore. You said, "Yes, they are probably right. I am too much. I am the problem." And that agreement became a contract, an invisible document written in the ink of your own pain that your spirit has been honoring ever since, faithfully, obediently, even though it was drafted in a language of lies. Every time you dimmed your light in a room full of people, you were honoring that contract. Every time you apologized for having needs, for taking up space, for feeling more deeply than the people around you seemed capable of understanding, you were paying rent on a lie that was never supposed to live inside you. When rejection came, when it felt like the whole world confirmed that something fundamental was broken in you, you did not just feel the pain and move on. You made a second agreement. You said, "I will never let myself be fully seen again, because being fully seen always leads to being fully rejected, and I cannot survive that level of exposure a second time." And that agreement locked a door, not just any door, the door to your true identity, because your true identity requires full visibility. It requires you to stand in the open, uncovered, unfiltered, unedited, without apology or explanation, and let the world see exactly what God put inside you. And you cannot do that while simultaneously hiding behind a version of yourself that was designed to be safe instead of real. There is a third agreement, and this one might be the most dangerous of all because it disguises itself as wisdom. At some point during the years of pain and silence and being overlooked and being passed over for things you deserved, you quietly agreed with smallness, not out loud. Nobody makes that agreement in a voice anyone else can hear. It happens in the quiet negotiations you have with yourself at 2 in the morning when the ceiling feels too close and the future feels too uncertain. It sounds like, maybe I should just be grateful for what I have. Maybe dreaming bigger is selfish. Maybe God's plan for me is simply to survive, not to thrive. Maybe the calling I felt so strongly in my bones was never really from Him. Maybe I misheard. Maybe it was my ego inventing a purpose to distract me from the ordinariness of my actual life. And with that agreement, quietly, without ceremony, you took the crown God was forging for you through fire and pain and lonely nights, and you placed it gently on the shelf. You told the king inside you to sit down and be quiet. You told the prophet to stop speaking. You told the warrior to stand down and go home. And you built a small, manageable, survivable life that fit neatly inside the borders of your fear, instead of the vast, terrifying, glorious borders of your calling. This is not your fault. I need you to hear that and believe it in your bones. You made these agreements because you were in pain. You were protecting yourself. You were doing what any intelligent, wounded, spiritually sensitive person would do when the world teaches them, through repeated experience, that being themselves is dangerous. You learned to shrink because shrinking kept you alive. And for a season, that survival strategy was necessary. It got you through. It kept you breathing when the alternative felt impossible. But the season has changed. The cocoon has served its purpose. The chrysalis is cracking open and light is pouring through the fractures. And the agreements you made in the dark, the contracts you signed with your own fear, the deals you struck with smallness because bigness felt too expensive, are now the only things standing between you and the full manifestation of who God says you are. False humility is one of the enemy's most sophisticated and effective weapons. Because it looks like virtue from the outside, it looks like modesty, it looks like spiritual maturity and self-awareness, but it is a cage built to look like a temple. When you say, "Who am I to carry something this big?" it sounds humble. People around you might even nod and call it admirable. But what you are actually doing is disagreeing with God. You are looking at the creator of the universe, the one who knit you together cell by cell with an intentionality that exceeds human comprehension, and saying, "I think you made a mistake with me. I think you put too much inside me. I think you overestimated my capacity. I think you chose wrong." And that is not humility. That is agreement with the enemy's assessment of your life instead of God's assessment. And those are two very different things. God did not stutter when he chose you. He did not miscalculate when he placed that fire in your chest that refuses to go out, no matter how many years of water the world pours on it. He did not accidentally make you too sensitive or too deep or too much. He looked at the assignment and measured its weight with perfect precision. He surveyed its scope across generations, calculated exactly what it would require, and then he built you to match it. Every ounce of sensitivity was measured for purpose. Every layer of depth was engineered for function. Every dimension of complexity that the world called excessive and problematic was designed with surgical intentionality. You were not overbuilt. You were precisely built. The assignment is just bigger than anyone around you has been able to see. The agreements have to break tonight. Not tomorrow when the sun comes up and it feels easier. Not when you are in a better mood. Not when the circumstances line up and it finally feels safe to be bold. Tonight, in this breath, because every single day you spend honoring a contract written by the enemy is a day your true identity stays locked behind a door that was never supposed to be closed to you. I want you to identify the agreement right now. You know which one it is. You have been carrying it for so long it feels like part of your personality, part of your DNA. But it is not. It is a parasite wearing your voice, speaking your language, mimicking your thought patterns so perfectly that you cannot tell the difference between your own thoughts and its suggestions. Maybe it is the agreement that says I am too much. Maybe it is the one that whispers nobody will ever truly see me and stay. Maybe it is I should just be grateful for crumbs and stop wanting the feast God promised. Maybe it is the deepest and most dangerous one of all. The one that says God could not possibly have meant someone like me for something this significant. Whatever it is, you know its shape. You know the weight of it. You know exactly how it sounds in your head at 3 a.m. You have been negotiating with it every single day of your life, and every negotiation has cost you something you will never get back. The agreement is not you. It was placed in you, and what was placed can be removed. What was signed under duress can be torn up. What was built on the foundation of lies can be demolished in a single moment of holy, righteous, unapologetic defiance. And that moment, chosen one, is coming right now. The thing that has been blocking everything, the invisible chain wrapped so tightly around your true identity that you forgot it was even there, is about to be named, confronted, and permanently broken. Not by your own strength, not by your willpower, but by the truth of who you actually are. Spoken out loud, declared with the authority of heaven behind it, sealed by the God who knew your real name before the foundations of the earth were set in place. And now comes the pivotal moment, the critical juncture where everything in your life shifts permanently. Are you ready? Because what happens next cannot be undone. This is your moment. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when the fear fades or the doubt quiets down. Right now. Everything we have walked through tonight, every word, every story, every revelation, has been leading to this single point. The false identity is exposed. The agreements are named. The enemy's strategy has been laid bare for exactly what it is: a desperate, calculated, relentless attempt to keep you from discovering the truth that heaven has been shouting over your life since before you took your first breath. And the truth is this: you are not the labels they gave you. You are not the too sensitive one. You are not the too much one. You are not the broken one or the forgotten one or the one who makes things complicated. You are not the one who was passed over because you were not enough. You are not the sum of your failures or the collection of your wounds or the echo of everyone else's opinion of you. You are not the false name the world wrote on your forehead and told you to answer to for the rest of your life. You are a chosen one. Chosen before the foundations of the earth were laid. Known before your mother's body formed the first cell that would become you. Named before any human voice ever spoke a word over your life. Your true identity was written in heaven's archives with ink that cannot be erased, stored in a vault. The enemy has been trying to break into your entire life, but has never been able to crack. And tonight, in this moment, that vault is opening. I want you to do something right now. Place your hand on your heart. I am serious. Physically put your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat. That rhythm is not random. That beat is the signature of the God who created you, still pulsing inside you, still faithful, still keeping time, even when you thought he had gone silent. Now declare this with me, out loud, not in your head. Your spirit needs to hear your own voice saying these words. The enemy needs to hear you say them in the open air where they become legal decrees in the spiritual realm. I release every false identity I have been carrying. I tear up every agreement I made with smallness, with shame, with the lie that I am too much. I reject every label the world placed on me that did not come from the mouth of God. I am not what they called me. I am not what the pain tried to make me. I am not what the enemy whispered I was at 3 in the morning when no one was there to tell me the truth. I am chosen. I was chosen before I was formed. I was known before I was named. I was set apart before my first cry, and my calling was sealed before my first wound. What God placed in me cannot be stolen, cannot be dulled, cannot be destroyed. It survived everything that was meant to kill it, and it is rising now. I release every person who could not see me. I forgive every voice that named me wrong. I let go of every moment I shrank to make someone else comfortable. I am done apologizing for the size of what God put inside me. I am done negotiating with fear. I am done asking permission from people who were never authorized to give it. My identity does not require a vote. It was declared by the King of Kings, and it stands whether the world agrees with it or not. I step into my true identity today, not the one the world assigned, not the one the enemy fabricated, the one heaven wrote, the one my spirit has been whispering about my entire life. The one that explains every closed door, every lonely season, every tear that fell without a witness. It was all preparation, it was all consecration, and it was all worth it. I am the breakthrough prophet God is raising in this generation. I am the mantle carrier whose assignment shakes the plans of the enemy. I am the one who was forged in fire, tested in isolation, stripped of every false layer, and now, in this moment, standing in the full, unfiltered, unapologetic truth of who I was always meant to be. If you declared that, something just shifted. You may feel it in your chest, a lightness, a warmth, a sense that something locked just opened. Or you may feel tears you did not expect and cannot explain. That is not weakness. That is the weight of the false identity falling off your shoulders for the first time in years. Let it fall. Do not pick it up again. It was never yours to carry. What just happened in the spiritual realm is irreversible. You cannot unspeak a declaration made from the true place in your spirit. The words you just released did not dissolve into the air. They registered in heaven. They were entered into the record. And the enemy heard every syllable, and he cannot challenge a decree that was authorized by the one who sits on the throne. Your breakthrough is not something you are waiting for anymore. It started the moment you opened your mouth. It started when you placed your hand on your heart and chose truth over the lie. It started when you looked at the false identity you have been wearing your whole life and said, "Not one more day." And now, everything in your life begins to realign around the truth of who you actually are. The relationships that are supposed to stay will stay and deepen in ways that shock you. The ones that were assigned to the old version of you will release naturally because they were never connected to the real you, only to the costume. The doors that are meant for you will open without you having to force them, because the frequency you are now operating on matches the frequency of your assignment, and everything calibrated for you will begin to find you. You are not the same person who pressed play on this message. The one who pressed play was still wearing the false name. The one listening right now with a hand on their heart and tears on their face and fire in their spirit. This is the real one. This is the one God has been waiting to see step into the open. And heaven is not just watching. Heaven is celebrating. Some messages inform. Some messages inspire. But every once in a while a message does something that cannot be measured, something that reaches into the locked room of your spirit and rearranges the furniture. If something stirred in you tonight, if something broke, if something opened, then this was that kind of message. And it was not an accident that you received it. You did not stumble onto this. You were brought here by a hand you cannot see, guided by a timing you did not control, positioned in front of these exact words at the exact moment your spirit was finally ready to receive them. Everything had to align. The season had to be right. The false identity had to crack just enough. The pain had to reach a threshold where you could no longer tolerate living as someone you were never meant to be. And tonight, every one of those conditions was met. Your true identity was never lost. It was never damaged. It was never erased by the years of pain or the labels or the rejection or the silence. It was hidden, protected by the same God who hid Moses in a basket on a river, who hid David in a field with sheep, who hid Joseph in a prison that was really a preparation chamber. God hides what he treasures most, and he hid your identity not because it was worthless, but because it was so valuable that premature exposure would have destroyed it before you were ready to carry it. But you are ready now. I know that because you are still here. You did not click away. You did not scroll past. You stayed for every word, through the pain and the confrontation and the tears and the declaration, because your spirit recognized truth and refused to let you leave before you received the full measure of what was prepared for you tonight. The season of preparation is complete. The cocoon has opened. The false name has been torn off. The agreements have been broken. The declaration has been spoken into the atmosphere and sealed by authority that no power on earth or beneath it can override. Your assignment starts now, not in theory, not in someday, now. And here is what I want you to remember when the morning comes and the world tries to hand you back the old labels. You are chosen. You are not chosen because you performed well enough. You are not chosen because you earned it through suffering. You are chosen because before the foundations of the earth, before time itself was set into motion, God looked at you and said, "That one. That is the one I want. That is the one who will carry this." And nothing that has happened since, not the pain, not the betrayal, not the 40 years in the desert, not the forgotten name, not the 3 a.m. battles, none of it changed his mind. He still says that one. He still says you. The old you could not have survived what is coming. And that is not a warning. That is a celebration. The old you, the one built on false agreements and borrowed identities and other people's expectations, that version was not equipped for the weight of what God is about to release into your hands. But the one standing here now, the one who just declared their true identity with authority and tears and fire, this version was built for exactly this. Every struggle refined you. Every betrayal educated you. Every lonely night deepened the well from which you will draw when others are running dry. You did not just survive your story. Your story built you into the only person capable of carrying what comes next. If this word met you in the exact place you needed it to, I need you to do 3 things. First, type in the comments right now, "I step into my true identity." Say those words in public. Let your declaration be witnessed. Because when you speak truth in the open, it becomes a stake in the ground that the enemy cannot pull up. Second, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. This is not a one-time encounter. There are more revelations coming, more layers of your true identity to uncover, more agreements to break, more declarations to speak. And if God brought you here tonight, he intends to keep speaking to you through this space. Do not miss the next word. Third, and this one might be the most important, think of one person in your life who has been called too sensitive, too deep, too much, too quiet, One person who is still wearing the false identity, still apologizing for existing, still shrinking so the room stays comfortable. Send this to them right now. Do not wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow the urgency fades and the moment passes. Send it now. Because what if this message is their burning bush? What if you are the one God chose to deliver their divine appointment? What if sharing this is the first act of your true identity in action? Your breakthrough is not coming, chosen one. It is already here. It arrived the moment you refused to look away from the truth. And it is not a fragile thing that will collapse if the wind blows. It is anchored. It is sealed. It is backed by the same power that split the Red Sea and raised the dead and turned a shepherd boy into a king. You are standing between two identities right now, the one that is dissolving and the one that heaven is birthing. The old one is fading fast, and it will try to call you back. The familiar always does. But you have seen too much tonight to go back. You have heard too much to pretend you did not hear it. You have declared too much to undeclare it. The door that opened tonight stays open, and the only direction that makes sense anymore is forward. Walk into it. Your true identity is not a destination you arrive at someday. It is a reality you step into right now, with every word you speak, every agreement you break, every time you choose truth over the comfortable lie. You are chosen. You have always been chosen. And now, finally, you know it. Go in peace. Go in power. Go in the unshakable knowing that the God who started this will finish it. And he is not finished with you. He is just getting started.